Hey there, welcome to Busy Horse channel, where amazing stories never stop. If you crave mind-blowing surprises, epic drama, and perfect revenge moments, you are in the right place. Subscribe today and jump into tales that will leave you speechless, laughing, and wanting more. Incredible characters, unbeatable twists, and super satisfying endings. That's what Busy Horse channel brings you every single time. Smash that bell and let's dive in.
She planned the heist. I planned the counterattack.
The pipe wrench slipped from my greasy fingers at exactly 1:47 a.m., clanging against the basement floor like a church bell announcing the apocalypse. I'd been wrestling with our ancient water heater for 3 hours, cursing the previous homeowner who thought duct tape was a permanent plumbing solution. But it wasn't the wrench that sent a chill through me. It was the second cell phone buzzing insistently from Vanessa's purse upstairs. My name's Eddie Price, and I'm a carpenter who fixes things for a living. Houses, cabinets, broken dreams, you name it. What I couldn't fix, apparently, was my marriage to Vanessa, though I didn't know it yet. Not officially, anyway. I climbed the creaky stairs from our basement, wiping my hands on an old towel. Our mid-century fixer-upper groaned around me like it was sharing my pain. 11 months of marriage, and Vanessa was working late again. Third time this week. Her law firm must really value dedication, I thought sarcastically. The phone kept buzzing. Vanessa's main phone sat silent on the kitchen counter. This was something else entirely. A sleek iPhone hidden in the side pocket of her designer purse. The screen lit up with notifications. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Same place? G. Your husband suspect anything? G. Wear that red dress I bought you? G. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. 11 years in the Army teaches you to process information before reacting. The Middle East taught me that panic gets you ended. This wasn't a roadside bomb, but it felt like one had just detonated in my chest. I scrolled through the messages with the detached efficiency of a demolitions expert examining unexploded ordnance. Greg Halpern, visiting MBA professor at the local university. Photos of hotel rooms, restaurant reservations, and enough explicit content to make a sailor blush. The front door rattled. Vanessa's key in the lock. I slipped the phone back into her purse and returned to the kitchen, where I'd been making my famous midnight chili, a recipe that involved enough jalapenos to strip paint. Perfect for the occasion. Eddie, what are you doing up? Vanessa's voice carried that particular tone wives use when they're annoyed at being caught. She looked immaculate despite her supposed 14-hour workday, hair perfect, makeup fresh, not a wrinkle in her expensive blouse. Pipe burst in the basement, I said, stirring the chili with deliberate calm. Figured I'd cook while I waited for the water to drain. Want some? She wrinkled her nose. It's almost 2 a.m. Time flies when you're having fun, I replied, ladling the fiery concoction into 2 bowls. How was work? Must have been quite the case to keep you there so late. Vanessa's eyes flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. Depositions ran long, you know how it is. I really don't, I said, handing her a spoon. But I'm learning. She took a small bite and immediately reached for water. God, Eddie, this is like eating lava. Funny thing about heat, I said, watching her face redden. It has a way of revealing what's really underneath. We ate in silence after that. Vanessa picked at her food while I savored every burning spoonful. When she finally excused herself to shower, I heard the bathroom door lock click with unusual emphasis. I finished my chili and cleaned the kitchen with military precision. Then I did something that would have made my old Army intelligence buddies proud. I photographed every message on that hidden phone with my own device. Screenshots, contact information, even the metadata. Evidence Preservation 1001. By the time Vanessa emerged from her 40-minute shower, I was back in the basement, pretending to wrestle with the water heater. She called down a perfunctory goodnight, and I heard our bedroom door close. I sat on my workshop stool in the basement, surrounded by the tools of my trade, and planned my next move. Hammers, saws, measuring devices, everything I needed to build or tear down. Tonight felt like a demolition job. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Marty, who managed the Blue Moose, our local dive bar. You still up? Saw Vanessa's car at the Marriott earlier. Thought you should know. I typed back, just learning some interesting things myself. Drinks tomorrow? Always. You okay, man? I looked around my basement workshop, at the life I'd built with my own hands, at the marriage I'd apparently been maintaining solo for months. "I'm no saint, Marty," I texted back, "but I'm a quick study." The next morning, Vanessa left for work with a kiss on my cheek that felt like a Judas betrayal. I waited exactly 30 minutes, then drove my pickup truck to a spot across from Greg Halpern's downtown condo building. Modern glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed, "I have more money than taste." Mrs. Stokes, our 78-year-old neighbor, had called me at 8 a.m. with information that would have made the CIA jealous. "Eddie, dear," she'd said in her sweet grandmother voice, I couldn't help but notice Vanessa's been doing her yoga very late at night. Yesterday I saw her car at that professor's building at 11 p.m. Quite dedicated to her flexibility, isn't she? Mrs. Stokes had been watching our neighborhood like a hawk for 40 years. Nothing escaped her notice, and she had a gift for delivering devastating observations with the innocence of a church lady discussing the weather. I parked behind a delivery truck and waited. At 11:30 a.m., Vanessa's Honda pulled into the visitor parking. She emerged wearing an outfit I'd never seen before, a red dress that definitely hadn't come from her usual department store budget. Greg met her at the entrance, and even from 50 yards away, their body language told the whole story. I snapped photos with my phone's zoom function, feeling like a private investigator in a bad movie. But this wasn't entertainment. This was intelligence gathering. They disappeared into the building for 2 hours. When they emerged, Greg's hands were all over her, and Vanessa was laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. They kissed goodbye like teenagers, completely oblivious to the world around them. I followed Vanessa back to her law office, then drove home to process what I'd learned. But first, I had a confrontation to prepare for. That evening, I cooked dinner. Vanessa's favorite salmon with asparagus. I set the table with our wedding china and opened a bottle of wine. When she walked through the door at 6 p.m. sharp, she looked surprised. "What's the occasion?" she asked, eyeing the setup suspiciously. "Can't a husband cook for his wife without an occasion?" I replied, pulling out her chair. "Sit, let's talk." Dinner conversation started normally. Work, weather, weekend plans. Then I shifted gears. "I've been thinking about our marriage lately," I said, cutting my salmon with surgical precision. 11 months. Not quite a year, but long enough to establish patterns. Vanessa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What kind of patterns?" "Communication patterns, trust patterns, fidelity patterns." The word fidelity hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. "Eddie, what are you getting at?" I reached into my shirt pocket and placed a printed screenshot on the table between us. Greg's message about the red dress, the same red dress she was wearing in the photo I'd taken that afternoon. Vanessa's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, fear, anger, and finally, cold calculation. "You went through my private things?" she said, her voice shifting to the tone she used with hostile witnesses at depositions. "I found them by accident," I replied calmly. "The phone was buzzing at 2 a.m. I thought it might be an emergency. That's my business phone. Interesting business meetings you've been having." She stood up abruptly, knocking over her wine glass. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like a spreading stain. "I don't have to explain myself to you. Actually, you do. We're married, remember? 11 months ago, in front of God and everybody." Vanessa's laugh was bitter. "Married, right. To a carpenter who thinks this house and your little workshop make you some kind of success story. And you think Greg Halpern is a better option? Greg understands ambition. He knows what it means to want more than this small-town mediocrity." I nodded slowly as if considering her point. "More? Like half of everything I own?" Her expression shifted again, and I saw something that chilled me. Calculation. Pure, cold calculation. "Eddie, I think we need to discuss our future realistically. This marriage isn't working. We want different things." "Such as?" "I've been talking to my friend Riley at the firm. She says that in Maine, common law marriage principles can apply after just 6 months of cohabitation. Combined with my contributions to this household, your contributions, emotional labor, household management, opportunity costs from my career," I laughed. Actually laughed. "You want to divorce me and take half my assets for an affair you've been having for God knows how long? It's called palimony, Eddie. And yes, I'm entitled to compensation for the time I've invested in this relationship." The mask was completely off now. This wasn't about love or even attraction to Greg. This was about money, my money. The house I'd inherited from my grandfather and spent 3 years renovating. The workshop where I'd built a successful carpentry business. The savings account I'd been filling since I was 18 years old. Well, I said, standing up and beginning to clear the dishes. I guess we'll see about that. Riley says it's a slam dunk case, especially if I can demonstrate that you've been emotionally harmful or controlling. I paused, holding her wine glass. Emotionally harmful? Going through my phone, following me, making accusations? It's textbook controlling behavior. And the affair? What affair? I have a friend, a male friend. There's nothing illegal about friendship. I nodded again, that same thoughtful nod. You're right, Vanessa. There's nothing illegal about friendship or photography or evidence preservation. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm also a quick learner when it comes to legal strategy. See you in court, Ness. I walked to the kitchen, leaving her standing in the dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of our marriage and her spilled wine. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Stokes watering her garden, probably absorbing every word of our conversation through our paper-thin walls. My phone buzzed. A text from Marty. Blue Moose, now. You sound like you need a drink. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. Vanessa was already on her phone, probably calling Riley to accelerate their legal timeline. Where are you going? She demanded. To see a friend, I replied. A male friend. Nothing illegal about friendship. The Blue Moose hadn't changed since 1987, and that was exactly why I loved it. Dark wood, dim lighting, and the kind of atmosphere where men could drink beer and plot revenge without judgment. Marty had owned the place for 15 years, and he ran it like a combination therapist's office and intelligence headquarters. You look like someone ran over your dog, Marty said, sliding a beer across the bar before I'd even sat down. Except you don't have a dog. Worse, I replied. I have a wife. Marty was my age, but his prematurely gray hair made him look like a wise bartender from a movie. He'd been married 3 times and divorced twice, which made him an expert on the subject by local standards. Talk to me, he said, wiping down glasses with the methodical precision of a man who'd heard 1,000 sob stories. I told him everything. The hidden phone, the messages, the confrontation, Vanessa's legal threats. Marty listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow. So she wants to take you for half of everything because she's been cheating, he summarized when I finished. That's the plan, apparently. And this Riley character thinks it'll work. Common law marriage, emotional labor, opportunity costs. It's like they've been planning this for months. Marty set down his towel and leaned across the bar. Eddie, my friend, you're thinking about this all wrong. How so? You're approaching this like an honest man dealing with honest people. But Vanessa and her lawyer friend are running a con game. You know what you do to con artists? Enlighten me. You out-con them. You're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself when you should be gathering ammunition. I have photos. Photos of what? A woman having lunch with a man? Hugging goodbye? Eddie, you need more than that. You need to hit her where it hurts, which is her reputation, her career, her future prospects with Professor Wonderful. Marty was right. I'd been thinking like a victim instead of a strategist. Time to change tactics. What do you know about Greg Halpern? I asked. Visiting professor at the university, drives a white Tesla. Big spender, bigger ego. Word is he's got a reputation with female students. What kind of reputation? The kind that gets professors fired if anyone can prove it. I felt something shift in my chest, not anger, but focus. The same feeling I'd had in the Middle East when a mission plan finally clicked into place. I need to know more about him, I said. Leave that to me. I've got customers who work at the university, maintenance guys, cafeteria workers, security guards. They see everything and nobody pays attention to them. And Vanessa? What about her? She's got secrets. That hidden phone, the sudden expensive clothes, the confidence about this legal strategy. People don't just wake up one day and decide to destroy their marriage for money. You think there's more to this? I know there is. Vanessa's many things, but she's not spontaneous. This has been planned. Marty refilled my beer without being asked. So what's your next move? Research, investigation, evidence gathering. Sounds like you're planning a military operation. That's exactly what I'm planning. I spent the next 2 hours at the Blue Moose, talking strategy with Marty and a few of his regular customers who'd wandered into our conversation. Small towns are like that. Everyone's business becomes everyone's business, especially when it involves betrayal and legal drama. By closing time, I had a plan and a network of informal allies. Mrs. Stokes would continue her neighborhood surveillance. Marty would gather intelligence on Greg through his university contacts. I would focus on Vanessa's financial records and communications. "One more thing," Marty said as I prepared to leave. "You sure you want to go down this road? Once you start digging, you might find things you wish you hadn't." "Marty, she's already planning to take half of everything I own and paint me as a harmful husband. How much worse can it get?" He smiled grimly. Famous last words, my friend. Famous last words. I drove home through empty streets, my mind already working through the logistics of what came next. Vanessa's car was in the driveway, but the house was dark except for our bedroom window. Probably on the phone with Riley, refining their strategy. I parked and sat in my truck for a moment, looking at the house I'd spent 3 years renovating. Every board, every nail, every coat of paint had been applied with my own hands. I'd built this place into a home, and now my wife wanted to sell it out from under me to finance her new life with another man. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop harassing my girlfriend or you'll regret it. G." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Looking forward to meeting you in person, Professor. We have a lot to discuss." His response came immediately. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," I replied, then turned off my phone. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. 3 days later, I was crouched in the bushes outside Greg Halpern's condo like a suburban commando, feeling ridiculous but determined. My army training had covered surveillance techniques, but nothing about spying on cheating wives and their academic boyfriends in small-town Maine. Greg's building had terrible security, all glass and style, no substance. The kind of place designed to impress visitors, not keep out determined carpenters with lock-picking skills and a grudge. I'd spent the morning following Greg's routine. Coffee at 7 a.m., university from 9 to 3, gym until 5, home by 6. Predictable as a Swiss watch, which made him either very organized or very stupid. Based on his text messages, I was betting on stupid. At 8 p.m., Greg left for dinner alone. I watched his white Tesla disappear around the corner, then move to the building's service entrance. The lock was a joke. 20 seconds with a tension wrench and rake pick, skills I'd learned from a former Special Forces buddy who'd become a locksmith. Greg's condo was exactly what I'd expected. Modern furniture, expensive electronics, and the kind of sterile cleanliness that screamed bachelor trying too hard. But it was his home office that interested me most. Financial documents scattered across his desk told an interesting story. Greg Halpern, visiting MBA professor and self-styled success guru, was broke. Worse than broke, he was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, student loans in default, and a mortgage on a house in Boston that was 3 months behind. His laptop was password protected. But Greg had made the classic mistake of writing passwords on sticky notes. Professor 123 got me into his email account, where I found a treasure trove of information. Greg wasn't just having an affair with my wife. He was running a systematic seduction operation targeting wealthy women in town. Emails to 3 other married women, all with similar patterns. Expensive gifts, promises of a better life, subtle suggestions about their husband's inadequacies. But Vanessa was special. She was his exit strategy. Email threads between Greg and someone named Riley Law revealed the real plan. Riley wasn't just Vanessa's friend. She was Greg's accomplice. They'd identified me as a target months ago. Successful carpenter, inherited property, substantial savings, no family to complicate a divorce. The emails laid out their strategy with clinical precision. Target has military background but no legal sophistication. Standard emotional misuse allegations should be sufficient for favorable settlement. V confirms Target has approximately $200K liquid assets plus property value estimated $350K. Timeline. Establish relationship. Create documentation of misuse pattern. File for emergency protective order. Force quick settlement to avoid publicity. I photographed everything with my phone, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. This wasn't a crime of passion or a marriage gone wrong. This was a calculated theft, and I was the mark. The sound of a car door slamming outside sent me into motion. I closed the laptop, returned everything to its original position, and slipped out through the service entrance just as Greg's Tesla pulled into the parking lot. Back home, I found Vanessa in the kitchen, making tea and looking nervous. "How was your day?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "Educational," I replied. "Yours?" "Fine, normal. Riley thinks we should try counseling before making any big decisions." Counseling. Interesting suggestion. It shows good faith, that we tried to work things out. I nodded thoughtfully. Good faith. I like that concept. Very important in legal proceedings. She looked at me sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just agreeing with you about good faith." My phone rang. Mrs. Stokes. "Eddie, dear, I hope I'm not calling too late, but I thought you should know that professor friend of Vanessa's was just here, parked across the street, taking pictures of your house." "Pictures?" "With a big camera. Very thorough. Almost like he was documenting something." I looked at Vanessa, who had gone pale. "Thanks, Mrs. Stokes. I appreciate the heads up." After I hung up, Vanessa tried to look innocent. "What was that about? Your boyfriend was taking pictures of our house. Any idea why?" "He's not I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Greg Halpern, visiting MBA professor, currently about $50,000 in debt, and looking for a wealthy wife to solve his problems." Vanessa's mask slipped completely. "You've been investigating him?" "I've been investigating both of you, and Riley. Quite the little conspiracy you've got going." She stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this." "Actually, you do. See, I found some interesting emails tonight. Want to hear about them?" The color drained from her face. "You broke into his computer?" "I prefer conducted research. Amazing what people leave lying around when they think they're smarter than everyone else." Vanessa grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I'm staying at Riley's tonight. Give her my regards," I called after her. "Tell her I'm looking forward to our day in court." After she left, I sat in my kitchen and reviewed the photos I'd taken. Email threads, financial documents, evidence of a conspiracy to defraud me of everything I'd worked for. My phone buzzed. A text from Marty. "Got some interesting info about your professor friend. Meet me tomorrow at 10. I texted back. "I've got some interesting info too. This is about to get very ugly." "Good," he replied. "Ugly is what they deserve." Marty's information was even better than I'd hoped. He'd assembled a small army of university employees who'd been watching Greg Halpern with growing disgust for months. "Jenny from the registrar's office says he's been requesting personal information on female students," Marty explained over coffee at the Blue Moose. "Home addresses, financial aid status, family background. That's against university policy. That's the least of it. Mike from security says Greg's been having study sessions with graduate students in his office after hours. Door locked, blinds closed. Anyone file complaints? 2 students tried. Both got transferred to different programs mysteriously. Word is Greg has something on the department head." I showed Marty the photos I'd taken from Greg's computer. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the evidence. "Jesus, Eddie, this isn't just adultery. This is organized fraud. Gets better. Look at this email thread with Riley." Marty read silently, his expression growing darker. "They've done this before." "What do you mean? This language, this strategy? It's too polished for a first attempt. I bet if we dig deeper, we'll find other victims. Other husbands they've scammed. Other men who got taken for everything they had by cheating wives and predatory lawyers." The possibility hadn't occurred to me, but it made perfect sense. Riley's confidence, Greg's systematic approach, Vanessa's sudden transformation from loving wife to calculating predator. This was a practiced routine. "I need to find their other victims," I said. "Leave that to me. I know people in the legal community. Bartenders hear everything." "What about Greg's university problems?" "That's trickier. University administration protects itself first, students second, truth third. But if we can document his behavior, I have an idea about that." I spent the rest of the morning at home, reviewing my evidence and planning my next moves. Vanessa had texted that she was taking some time to think, which meant she was coordinating with Riley and Greg to accelerate their timeline. My phone rang. An unknown number. "Mr. Price, this is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Maine State Police. I understand you've been harassing Professor Greg Halpern?" My blood went cold. I haven't been harassing anyone. Professor Halpern filed a complaint alleging stalking, breaking and entering, and threats of violence. He has documentation. What kind of documentation? Text messages, photographs of you following him, witness statements about threatening behavior. I thought fast. Detective, I think Professor Halpern is trying to get ahead of a much bigger story. Are you familiar with marriage fraud? Mr. Price, I'm calling to advise you to stay away from Professor Halpern and your estranged wife. Any further contact will result in arrest. My estranged wife? Mrs. Price filed for a restraining order this morning, alleging domestic misuse and stalking. You're to have no contact with her until the hearing next week. The line went dead. I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone, as the full scope of their plan became clear. They weren't just stealing my money. They were destroying my reputation and potentially sending me to jail. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Sorry it had to be this way. Riley says if you agree to a 50-50 split of assets, we can make the misuse allegations go away. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "See you in court." Her response came immediately. "You're making a mistake. We have evidence." "So do I replied. "And mine is real." Within an hour, Mrs. Stokes called with more intelligence. "Eddie, dear, there's been quite a bit of activity at the professor's place. Your wife moved in this afternoon, and that lawyer friend of hers has been there twice. They're planning something. Mrs. Stokes, I need to ask you a favor. Are you willing to testify about what you've observed? About Vanessa's late-night yoga sessions?" "Absolutely, dear. I've been keeping a journal." "A journal? Dates, times, license plates, visitors. 40 years of neighborhood watch has taught me to document everything." I could have kissed the old woman, and Mrs. Stokes, you're amazing. "I know, dear. Now, what's this I hear about restraining orders?" I explained the situation. Mrs. Stokes listened with the sharp attention of someone who'd seen enough neighborhood drama to recognize a setup. "They're trying to isolate you," she said finally. "Classic predator behavior, but they made one mistake." "What's that?" "They assumed you'd roll over and take it. They don't know about the Middle East, do they?" "What do you mean?" "Dear, I've been watching you for 3 years. You don't give up. You don't retreat. And you definitely don't let bullies win." She was right. I'd been reacting to their moves instead of making my own. Time to go on the offensive. "Mrs. Stokes, how would you like to help me win a war?" "I thought you'd never ask." The restraining order hearing was scheduled for Friday morning at 9 a.m. That gave me 4 days to build a defense and launch a counteroffensive that would destroy their credibility before they could destroy mine. I started with Riley. Maine's legal community was small, and Marty's network of bartenders and service workers had long memories. By Wednesday afternoon, I had the names of 3 men who'd been divorced by their wives using Riley's services in the past 2 years. The first was Tom Bradley, a plumber who'd lost his house and business to a wife who'd suddenly discovered she was emotionally unfulfilled. The second was Mike Chen, a restaurant owner whose wife had cleaned out their joint accounts and disappeared with her personal trainer. The third was David Wilson, a contractor whose wife had accused him of misuse and taken everything in the settlement. All 3 cases had followed the same pattern: sudden personality change in the wife, allegations of emotional misuse, quick settlements to avoid publicity, and wives who'd disappeared from town immediately after the divorces were finalized. "It's a racket," Tom Bradley told me over beer at the Blue Moose Wednesday night. "Riley finds women married to successful blue-collar guys, convinces them they deserve better, and then helps them steal everything in the divorce. Why didn't you fight it? With what?" She had witnesses, documentation, a whole story about how I was controlling and harmful. My own friends started to believe it. "What happened to your wife after the divorce?" "Moved to Florida with some guy she'd been seeing. Never saw her again." Mike Chen's story was nearly identical, except his wife had moved to California. David Wilson's ex had relocated to Arizona. "They're running a systematic operation," I told Marty after interviewing all 3 men. "Riley identifies targets, helps the wives build false misuse cases, takes a cut of the settlement, then the women disappear. In Greg's role, he's the bait. Seduces the wives, promises them a better life, helps them rationalize destroying their marriages. So what's your plan? Expose the whole operation, in court, in public, everywhere." Thursday morning, I received an unexpected ally. Jenny from the University Registrar's office called my cell phone. Mr. Price, I heard about your situation from Marty. I think I can help. We met at a coffee shop downtown, where Jenny handed me a manila folder. Greg Halpern's personnel file, she said quietly. Officially, this doesn't exist. The file revealed that Greg had been fired from his previous position at a university in Boston for inappropriate relationships with students. He'd been hired in Maine despite this history because the department head, Dr. Patricia Wells, was his former girlfriend, Dr. Wells has been covering for him, Jenny explained. But there's a group of faculty members who want him gone. They're willing to testify about his behavior if someone gives them the opportunity. What kind of testimony? Inappropriate workplace conduct, grade manipulation, financial impropriety. He's been using university resources for personal business. The file also contained copies of student complaints that had been buried, witness statements that had been ignored, and financial records showing Greg had been using his university credit card for personal expenses. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Because good men shouldn't be destroyed by predators, Jenny replied, and because Greg Halpern has hurt enough people. Thursday evening, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by evidence that would demolish Greg, Vanessa, and Riley's credibility. Financial records, email threads, witness statements, university documents, and testimonies from 3 previous victims. My phone rang. Vanessa. Eddie, we need to talk. I thought I wasn't allowed to contact you. The restraining order isn't final yet. Look, Riley thinks we can work something out. 60-40 split, you keep the house, no misuse allegations. Generous. What changed your mind? I don't want this to get ugly. It's already ugly, Vanessa. You made it ugly when you decided to steal everything I've worked for. I'm not stealing anything. I'm entitled. You're entitled to nothing. We were married 11 months. You contributed nothing to this house, nothing to my business, nothing to our savings. I contributed 3 years of my life. You contributed 11 months of lies and fraud. Silence on the other end. Eddie, you don't understand what you're up against. Riley has connections, resources. She can destroy your reputation, your business, everything. Let her try. We have evidence of your threatening behavior, your stalking, and I have evidence of your conspiracy to commit fraud. Want to compare notes in court? Another long silence. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you to withdraw the restraining order, admit you've been lying, and disappear from my life forever. And if I don't, then tomorrow morning, Judge Wilcox is going to hear some very interesting testimony about marriage fraud, university corruption, and a pattern of legal misuse targeting working-class men. You're bluffing. Am I? Ask Riley about Tom Bradley, Mike Chen, and David Wilson. Ask Greg about his personnel file from Boston University. Ask yourself if you really wanted to go to war with someone who has nothing left to lose. The line went dead. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Back off or you'll regret it. This is your last warning. I typed back, looking forward to tomorrow, Professor. Bring your lawyer. Friday morning couldn't come soon enough. Judge Patricia Wilcox had been presiding over family court in our county for 23 years, and her reputation for cutting through legal nonsense was legendary. She was exactly the kind of no-nonsense jurist I needed for what was about to unfold. I arrived at the courthouse at 8:30 a.m. with a briefcase full of evidence and 3 allies, Mrs. Stokes, Tom Bradley, and Jenny from the university. Marty had wanted to come, but someone needed to mind the bar and coordinate our backup plan. Vanessa, Riley, and Greg were already there, huddled in conference like generals planning a battle. Riley looked confident in her expensive suit. Greg appeared nervous, constantly checking his phone. Vanessa wouldn't meet my eyes. At exactly 9 a.m., we were called into Judge Wilcox's courtroom. This is a hearing on Mrs. Vanessa Price's petition for a temporary restraining order against her husband, Edward Price. Judge Wilcox announced, Mrs. Price, you may present your case. Riley stood up, smoothing her skirt with practiced precision. Your Honor, my client has been subjected to a campaign of harassment, stalking, and intimidation by her estranged husband. We have documented evidence of threatening behavior, illegal surveillance, and breaking and entering. She presented a folder of materials to the judge, screenshots of my text messages, photos of me following Greg, and sworn statements from Greg and Vanessa alleging threatening behavior. Mr. Price has been following my client and her friend, Professor Halpern, taking unauthorized photographs, and making implicit threats of violence, Riley continued. My client fears for her safety and requests immediate protection. Judge Wilcox reviewed the materials with the thoroughness of someone who'd seen every legal trick in the book. Price, how do you respond to these allegations? I stood up, feeling the weight of 3 years of marriage and 11 months of lies. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that these allegations are part of a systematic conspiracy to defraud me of my assets through false accusations. Riley objected immediately. Your Honor, this hearing is about domestic violence, not marital assets. Overruled, Judge Wilcox said dryly. I'll hear what Mr. Price has to say. I opened my briefcase and began laying out evidence like a prosecutor building a case. Your Honor, I have documentation showing that Mrs. Price, her attorney, Ms. Riley, and Professor Halpern have been planning this strategy for months as part of a marriage fraud scheme. I presented the email threads I'd photographed from Greg's computer, highlighting the passages about targeting me for my assets and creating documentation of misuse. Judge Wilcox's eyebrows rose as she read. These are quite specific, Mr. Price. How did you obtain them? Professor Halpern left his laptop unsecured in his office. I observed these documents during a visit to discuss his relationship with my wife. Riley jumped up. Your Honor, this evidence was obtained through illegal breaking and entering. Actually, I interrupted him, Professor Halpern's office door was open and university policy allows public access to faculty offices during posted hours. I have security footage confirming I entered through the main door during normal business hours. Jenny had provided that detail Thursday night along with a copy of the university's open door policy. Continue, Mr. Price, Judge Wilcox said, ignoring Riley's sputtering objections. I presented the financial documents showing Greg's debt problems, the personnel file revealing his history of inappropriate relationships, and the pattern of similar cases Riley had handled. Your Honor, I'd like to call Tom Bradley as a witness. Tom stood up and walked to the witness stand with the dignity of a man who'd been through absolute turmoil and survived. He testified about his divorce, Riley's role in building false misuse allegations, and the systematic way his wife had been coached to destroy his reputation. After the divorce was final, Tom said, my wife moved to Florida with a man she'd been seeing during our marriage. I later learned that Ms. Riley had handled 2 other similar cases that year, all following the same pattern. Riley's face was getting redder by the minute. Your Honor, this testimony is irrelevant to the current proceedings. I disagree, Judge Wilcox said sharply. Please continue, Mr. Bradley. Tom described the coordinated campaign to isolate him from friends and family, the manufactured evidence of controlling behavior, and the financial pressure that had forced him to settle rather than fight. When Tom finished, I called Mrs. Stokes to the stand. The elderly woman walked forward with the confidence of someone who'd been waiting 78 years for this moment. Mrs. Stokes, you live next door to my wife and me? For 40 years, dear. I've seen everything. What have you observed regarding Mrs. Price's behavior over the past few months? Mrs. Stokes pulled out a small notebook and adjusted her glasses. Well, Vanessa started visiting Professor Halpern in March. Always late at night, always when Eddie was working. She told me she was doing yoga, but I've never seen yoga that required quite so much moaning. Scattered laughter from the gallery. Judge Wilcox banged her gavel, but couldn't quite suppress a smile. I kept a journal, Mrs. Stokes continued, because something didn't seem right. Dates, times, license plates. Vanessa was spending 3 to 4 nights per week at the professor's condo, always returning home early in the morning to shower and change clothes. She testified for 20 minutes, providing a detailed timeline of the affair and corroborating my claims about Vanessa's deception. When Mrs. Stokes finished, Judge Wilcox turned to Riley. Ms. Riley, would you like to cross-examine these witnesses? Riley looked like a boxer who'd been hit by a freight train. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to consult with my client. Denied. Do you have any witnesses to call? Riley called Vanessa to the stand. My wife walked forward on unsteady legs, her confidence completely shattered. Mrs. Price, have you been having an affair with Professor Halpern? It's complicated. Yes or no, Mrs. Price? Yes, and did you conspire with Ms. Riley and Professor Halpern to make false accusations against your husband? Vanessa looked at Riley, who was frantically shaking her head. I need to speak with my attorney. Judge Wilcox leaned forward. Mrs. Price, you're under oath. Did you make false accusations against your husband as part of a plan to obtain his assets in a divorce settlement? The courtroom was dead silent. Vanessa looked at Greg, who was staring at the floor. She looked at Riley, who was gathering papers as if preparing to flee. Finally, she looked at me. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear that." "Yes," Vanessa said louder. "We planned it. All of it." The courtroom erupted. Judge Wilcox banged her gavel repeatedly, calling for order. "Mrs. Price, I'm dismissing your petition for a restraining order," Judge Wilcox announced. "Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation of perjury and conspiracy charges." She turned to Riley. "Ms. Riley, I'm also referring your conduct to the State Bar Association for disciplinary review." Finally, she addressed Greg. "Professor Halpern, I suggest you consult with an attorney regarding potential criminal charges." As we filed out of the courtroom, Riley grabbed Vanessa's arm and hissed something in her ear. Greg was already on his phone, probably calling a lawyer. Outside the courthouse, Mrs. Stokes patted my arm. "Well done, dear. Your grandfather would be proud." Tom Bradley shook my hand. "Thanks for giving me a chance to tell the truth. I've been waiting 2 years for that." Jenny hugged me quickly. "The university will probably fire Greg by Monday. Dr. Wells is already in damage control mode." I stood on the courthouse steps watching Vanessa get into Riley's car without a backward glance. 11 months of marriage, 3 years of relationship, and it ended with her confessing to fraud in open court. My phone buzzed. A text from Marty. "How did it go?" "Total victory," I replied. "Meet me at the bar. I'll buy the first round. And the second and the third," he texted back. "And you earned it." But as I walked to my truck, I realized this wasn't really about victory. It was about truth, justice, and refusing to be a victim. Some battles are worth fighting, even when the cost is everything you thought you wanted, especially then.